G'day everyone, Saxon here. I'm on the Africa Centre for Holistic Management land here at Dimbangombe, just south of Victoria Falls. And at the moment I'm chopping some wood for a little bit of a project that we've got going here. So I'm out collecting a few really big Mapani bits of wood so we can start making some cattle yards. But I was just looking around here and I thought now's a good time to have a quick bo peep at some of the ecosystem processes that you might be able to see on your land or some land around you. Now here we're in a brittle environment. So that means that there is seasonal humidity throughout the year. So there is a dry season and there is a wet season. Right now we're in the wet season. It is currently December the 21st, I think, 2022. And I just wanted to have a look at some of the ways in which an environment responds to lower succession in an attempt to become highly successional. So what do I mean by succession? So imagine you had some pretty rundown land and the only things you had there were just a few weeds and maybe some clover and a few really spriggly bits of grass. You'd say that would be low succession compared to what is possible for that particular environment or eco-region. So if you went to the same plot of land, well, not same plot of land, if you went to the plot of land next door that had been holistically managed, good ground cover, and they looked after perennials, it'd be different, right? So that'd be higher succession. So the ecosystem processes of the water cycle, the mineral cycle, sorry, it's very hot here. The water cycle, the mineral cycle, community dynamics and energy flow would be better than what they would be on the other land. And so we are currently, well, I am currently in a low successional part of this land. There hasn't been much cattle on here. The property is a very big place. And so whilst it may look deceptive, because it is green, most of these are annuals and they've only just come up in the last rain as the land is responding to this particular rain season. So all these sort of broadleaf ones here are all annuals. There's not much in terms of perennial. But what I did want to point out is something I noticed is the way the ecosystem responds to try to bring up the succession. So if we as humans and managers just let nature take its course and encourage those ecosystem processes, we can go quite far. So what I noticed here is that along all the cracks, all of these little grass plants are coming up. So when the ground cracks and breaks open, that's often where you'll find these little seedlings coming up. So I might pull one out just here, and you can see where he is right on that little line there. So he's coming up through there. So when you see cracks in the soil, because the rest of this is all capped. Okay, so there hasn't been much animal impact. It's hard as a rock, and these things, you can see there, they're coming up in these cracks. So these cracks are just one way of the ecosystem buffering itself from the effects of over-rest, which is what this land currently has applied to it. Mainly because there's just not enough cattle here to get around, because it's a big property. So we can see how the environment is responding to rest. We have these cracks in the soil that happen when it gets hard baked and when it gets capped. And so this is one way for the ecosystem to buffer itself. Another way that you'll find is litter banks. So where we have here, which is all this sort of bare ground, initially it was far more bare ground a few weeks ago before the rains had started. When those first rains came through, a lot of that material, a lot of the leaf matter and the sticks and what have you are pushed into litter banks. Now litter banks are also a way in which the environment tries to buffer itself from the effects of over-rest in a brittle environment. So let's just have a look here. We've got a litter bank just here where you can see the water has flown and has stopped just here. And you can see how different this little bit of the environment is. So we've got wider, more juicy leaves, so we know that our energy flow is increased. We have this little forb here, which looks like a vetch, but I'm not going to call it that until I know what it is or I see a flower. Either way, something has been nibbling at it, so it must be good. Same with all these. these have all been tipped by something. So something is choosing to graze this as opposed to all that. So I presume that these perhaps are perennials. But you can see where this litter bank has come and stopped and laid down. These are all mapani leaves. And if we just take these back just a little bit, you can see that it's still wet and moist under here. And there's little ant tracks through the whole thing. Same just here, there's more ants through. So we have the community dynamics going. So those ants are cycling minerals, they're aerating the soil. And so that's just this one little bit here that turned into a bit of a litter bank. And then back over here, we have more of these cracks in the ground in which this really sort of much thinner grass is coming up. So we know that this is nowhere near as high succession as this plant over here because of the size of the leaves. And they're far rougher as well. So this is just one way that the environment this is one way the environment in a brittle environment is trying to repair itself, okay? Because ultimately these will be overgrazed in a set stocking environment, and if there's not much else here come non-growing season, this will be really taken down because there's just not enough herd effect here to create enough animal impact to break up all this capping. Anyway, hope you found that informative. I'm going to get back to chopping wood. Thanks.